Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to this beautiful, hopefully beautiful live streaming, the Akira live development vlog. This is the sixth one that I've been doing. Welcome. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Where are you guys located? Write it in the chat. And yeah, hopefully we're gonna have fun. I decided to do these impromptu live streaming. I didn't schedule it before. I wasn't planning to do it, but I needed a break from a bunch of things that I'm doing. Let me just say that my mental health right now is not at its peak level. I'm struggling with a lot of stuff, so I decided to do this live streaming because I wanted to show you. I wanted first to distract myself. Doing these helps me to focus on other things and not think about all the shit that is going on. And I wanted to show you all the progress that we've been doing, we've been implementing into Akira, something that I'm working on currently, and I want to also use this live streaming to maybe implement something new that currently it's not available in Akira, and I want to show you how to implement it. Like specifically, I think we're going to implement some new G settings, some new setting to disable or not to control the sensitivity of the snapping of the different object with each other, with adjacent objects. So still already a bunch of people are connecting, which is great. Hello YBA, hello Ali, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. You missed me. Why? Yeah, I missed you too, guys. This is it's beautiful to do this live streaming and having some sort of like validation and a quick type of it's not really a conversation, right? You write in the chat, I read the chat, and I tell you what I think, and it's a one-way conversation, but it feels kind of like therapy. It's not like therapy because of course it doesn't help, it doesn't solve any problem, but it feels kind of like therapy, right? You have a platform and you can use it to say whatever the hell you want. Even you shouldn't, maybe a lot of people, like myself included, shouldn't use YouTube as a therapy platform to release all their shit in the open. But yeah, let's talk about Akira. Do not digress. So what we've been working on recently, let me switch here. You can see my beautiful System 76 laptop. This is a Gazelle from 2 years ago, 3 years, no, way more, I think. Let me check. System info. This is I don't know. System 76 Gazelle. Yeah. These should be Gazelle an i7 7700. It's 4 years old, right? Yeah, almost 4 years old. So, and Danny, our in-house therapist, in-house Quebecois therapist, has talk me about your childhood. My childhood was filled of programming. Anyway, I'm doing this live streaming here on my System 76 laptop. I'm running Elementary OS 6, the daily build, because I'm a supporter. You can do it. You can access daily builds if you support them on GitHub, which I want to support them because they empowered me to build this beautiful application. But what we've been working on, all the most recent improvements, actually, let me switch to get check out master. Do we have anything coming from master? No, I think it's good like this. Okay, let's rebuild this thing. What did you share? Q1 17. Oh, first quarter 2017. Oh my god, feels so old, so far away. So yeah, it's a 4 years old laptop which still runs like a brand new laptop, which is amazing. Okay, so if we run Akira and I show you what we have right now, we implemented by we, I mean there's this guy MB Fraga. I don't know if you're part of the Matrix chat, you see him talking there and contributing a lot. He's been an amazing contributor. It's implemented a lot of things. It's helping us to basically rebuild the entire transformation process, the workflow. Before we had like a relative transformation. Now we're switching to absolute transformation to manage all the items position, because it's easier when you want to implement and when you want to make the object aware of adjacent object. So since we are going to have a million different objects, each single object needs to be aware of the space around itself, and in order to do that we needed to do absolute transformation, otherwise it wasn't possible. So what he implemented, it's this beautiful snapping, and you probably saw it if you've been following on social media, but these, now every object is aware of its surroundings, and whenever there's an interaction with some specific coordinates, so for example this item is aware that its snapping is top left, so the origin coordinates to the center of the other item, we return this sort of like magnetic snapping, and you can see how the item snaps into place. And if I don't drag it further away from the sensitivity, that by default the sensitivity threshold is like 4 pixels. If I don't do that, it remains snapped to its position, so I can slide it, for example in this case vertically, or if I want to snap it to the side I can do it horizontally, and it maintains on the same coordinates, because there's this like forced snapping position in place. It doesn't allow the item to move, but of course it's a very gentle snapping. It's not aggressive. So one thing that I would like to implement today, and I want to show you, it's the ability for the user to change the snapping sensitivity. So if he wants to have a way more aggressive snapping, for example like 20 pixel, if you don't move the object further away than 20 pixel, if your mouse movement doesn't produce a larger amount than 20 pixel, it doesn't snap away, stays attached. So maybe some users, they want the guides but they don't want snapping, or some users, they don't want the guides at all, or some users want the guides and want a very aggressive snapping because it's helpful for them, especially when you have a lot of items and you try to create something super quickly. So we should offer this flexibility. There's already some customization in place for the snapping. The preferences panel received this new canvas section where you can control the pixel grid. Yeah, by the way, we have a pixel grid, so if I zoom in, shift tab, now we have a pixel grid. Look at this. Still needs some rendering fixes, but you can see a lot of users, they said, oh, this is wrong, like the border is not actually aligned to the pixel grid. It's correct. It's actually aligned because the origin of the item, it's returned and it's controlled by its bounding boxes. The bounding boxes, we have two types of bounding boxes. The first one that only basically only handles or only reacts to the actual fields, like the filling of the item, and that's the correct bounding box. That's what we use for the coordinates. So we are at 347, 138. If I add a border of whatever, like 6 pixels, these coordinates don't change and shouldn't change, because the border size doesn't affect the actual object sizing. So that's different. But then we have another type of bounding boxes, the regular bounding boxes. They include the border width, and we use that for export purposes, because if you want to export an item with 20 pixel border width, you should include also that border width. And here, when you have a pixel, like a 1 pixel border, you see that it's halfway through. In between, you have 0.5 pixel outside the grid, another 0.5 pixel inside the grid. And this is normal because this is the standard of SVGs. SVGs right now don't support inset or like inside or outside border radius, or sorry, border location. So they always generate the border from the center. In fact, if I set the border to 2 pixels, now it perfectly fits the grid, right? Because we have the 2 pixels starting from the center of the origin of the actual item, and we have 1 pixel outside and 1 pixel inside. So this is absolutely normal. This is exactly how Inkscape behaves and how the regular SVGs behaves. There's an extra type of customization that you have, like by default, the grid comes with this like light gray, which is not transparent because it needs to be visible anywhere. But see, if you're dealing with, for example, wireframing, and all your items are just light gray, it's very hard to see. Especially, you can see here I have this border that you don't see the grid what it is. You have the ability to customize the grid color. So for example, you're doing something very, very crazy, all light gray, and you want a higher contrast, you can just make all the grid red. So I can also see on top of the border. It's full control and customization for that little thingy. We can reset it here. I need to implement something like reset to default values, but I'm gonna do it later. It's not super important right now. But yeah, other than the grid that you can also toggle and untoggle by this pixel grid, and the pixel grid, it's hidden until you zoom in. I think it's like for 300%. Yes, if you pass below 300%, you don't see the grid because you already see how it looks weird. It's not really useful to see a grid, make the grid visible when you cannot even distinguish the pixel. This is just the pixel grid. It's not a grid that you can manage. We're going to implement then rulers and guidelines that you can create your own custom grid. For example, you custom columns and custom rows, and those will always be visible. But this is a pixel grid, so if you're in a resolution where you cannot see the pixels, we hide the grid in order to avoid weird rendering artifacts because of the strange zoom or like whatever. But the other thing that I was saying is that we have the customization of the snapping guides. You can define first of all, you can disable the snaps. So if you're working with a lot of items and you're kind of like free designing, right? You're doing your wireframe, so you just need to quickly draw something, or you're maybe using your pen tool when we will implement the vector pencil tool, and you want to do some free drawings without any constraints. You can disable the snapping guides. So now if I move the object around, I don't have any snapping, and I'm totally free to move it wherever. I don't have any forced magnet a response to the various object. But also, if you don't like the default color of the snap, so you want something more subtle, or you want a color, maybe you're colorblind and the red doesn't really work for you, you can change it to whatever color you want. So you want a light green because it's something that it's there but it's not as aggressive. You can see now it's light green. So another thing that we will probably implement today, it's another option here, very similar to the default shapes. So when it's enabled, you can control the default border width of the item. We can do exactly the same to control the sensitivity of the snaps. That, as I said, right now it's 4 pixels, but if the user wants more or wants less, as I said, he wants the snaps or the guides to appear without any magnetic snapping, we can just, instead of having another option, a lot of tools, they have these like couple of extra options, like enable the snaps or enable the snapping or enable the guides but disable the magnetic snaps, or enable the magnetic snaps without showing the guides. Like that, it's kind of like, it's weird. And sometimes it happened to me. It happens to me that I had the snaps enabled, but not the magnetic enable, and I didn't understand why it wasn't magnetically snapping. So I had the guides enabled, but not the snapping, or sometimes I had the snapping enabled, but I couldn't see the guides. So it was very confusing to me. Having everything under one place, and you can control. If you want the guides on, perfect. You don't want snapping, you can set the sensitivity to 0, you can control the sensitivity and all the other good stuff. So it's easier that way. We have a couple of new people in the chat. Hello, Dan. Hey, Dan. How's it going? Oh, Lawrence is here. Ohio. Danny asks, can you change the color of the grid, or it's not yet implemented? Yes, Danny. The pixel grid, you mean? I just showed it. You didn't see it? The pixel grid. You can change the color of the pixel grid. Let me zoom in. This is the pixel grid. You have in the settings, canvas, pixel grid color. You change this to purple, or you change this to, I don't know, bright red. You can see how it changes underneath, right? Maybe I'm looking at the feed. Probably is not super visible, but yes, you can change. The quick answer is yes, you can. And you can hide it and whatever, you can zoom back. So, oh, hello, Christian. Welcome. The other thing that I want to show you is the work that I'm doing, and it's currently under review of enabling multi-select. Because by default, multi-select is not a thing. Like you, of course, like every feature doesn't come by default on a graphical user interface or program, or it doesn't come by default enabled in the Cairo library. You need to handle objects independently, and multi-selection is hard. It's very hard because it's not simply, and I thought at the beginning, well, it's just simply all the methods that we have, for example, like scaling or rotating or the z-index, the sorting of the things, we can just simply put those methods inside a for each loop. For each, all these selected items do this, repeat the method for each all selected items. But it's not that simple, and it was very naive of me thinking, oh, this is gonna be just a for each loop. And no, it's very complicated because a lot of things change. They change the coordinates, they change the relative bounding box. Now, instead of having one object of bounding box, you have multiple objects that create this bounding box that encapsulates all the objects. And what if you change the z-index of 3 different items that are in 3 different artboards in 3 different locations, and you say, okay, put all these items on top of what? On top of their respective artboard, on top of the free items, on top of nothing? Or do we disable that? What if the users wants to flip all the items at once? Do we flip them all based on the center of the item, or based on the center of the selection? It's just, there are a million different things that also, like controlling the colors or controlling the borders. If the user selects multiple items with different colors and they change the color to one, what does it mean? Does it mean that all the colors should change equally because the user is changing colors to all the items selected, or only the color that matches the one they select? It's a little bit messy. So let me show you what I've been trying to do. Git branch, implement multi-select. I forgot the name of the branch. Implement multi-select. Boop, boom. Okay. And this has been interesting and entertaining and fun to figure out. All right. So actually, let me open, I restored a file. This is a test file that I created, and yeah, it saves. You can save files and it works. So multi-select, for example, let's deal with free items for now, like items that don't belong to an artboard. We have these 3 items, right? I select 1, 2, 3. Okay. If and you can see the layer it's selected based on the item that it's selected, and it matches automatically. So let's say I select these 2 items. So I hold Shift key, Shift key, and I select on the item. Now this is selected. So if I click and drag, also now these bounding box, it's kind of reacting to the adjacent things, but not really. Let's see, it's reacting based. You can see how here the item inside of the selection, so the square, it's reacting to his left edge, to the left edge of the circle, which might be good, but also it might be terrible, because maybe the users wants to align these to like the center of these bounding box selection to the center of the circle. And we might say that you cannot do it unless you group those items. So if those items are grouped, then they're handled as a single group. But since these items are not grouped, they're still treated as separated items. But this is a decision that we have to make. And some design tools, advanced design tool, if I'm not wrong, like Figma or Sketch, they give you the ability, even if you have a grouped item, if you hold down Control or Shift, I don't remember, you can interact with items inside the group. So you don't have to enter the group in order to interact with items that are still grouped. So that's one thing to consider. Right now, we only implemented the movement. We didn't implement scaling. You can see like the scaling is only affecting the last selected item, which is that the square, and also rotation is affecting only the last selected items. This is on purpose. We didn't want to we're doing things like slowly. First, let's nail down the movement and location, and then we will work on rotation and scaling of multiple objects. But this is good. One thing that you have to notice also, of course, when I select multiple items, all the items, all the layers are selected. And if I click, and this is something that it took me a little bit. So if these are selected, I'm not holding Shift key, but if I click and drag, the selection is maintained. If I simply click on an item, the selection is reset and I click only that item. And this was very interesting, and I never noticed this thing about other software, is that they handle selection on both click and click release. And this is it's very important, because if you click and drag, it means that you're moving things around. You shouldn't reset the selection. But if you just click and not moving anything, it means that you don't care anymore about the multi-selection and you just want to select an item. So that was very interesting to keep track of the event movement. The event movement of, in Vala, you can keep track of the location of the click on both click down and release. And if the click down and release are in the same exact location, it means that the user just clicked and didn't move, and we can reset that. Then one thing that is kind of tricky. So you see here, when I select something, just keep the notice on the reordering layers, like the Z index buttons. If I select the top one, you cannot push it to top, like the push to top and move up are disabled, because this is already on the top position. So you cannot click those items. The UI adapts and tells you, hey, this is already up, you cannot push. If you select the one in the middle, in between these other two layers, everything is enabled, because you can push both up or down. But if you select the last one, the push down or push to bottom are disabled, because it's already at the bottom. But of course, this doesn't work well in multi-selection. If you select an item that it's both on top and the bottom, these don't update. If I select an item that is on top and the center, these don't update. If I select an item that is the center and it's on top, these don't update. So it only reacts to the first selected item. and doesn't react to multiple. And this is a thing that we need to decide how to handle, because for example, if I select this rectangle in the artboard, and then this circle in the other artboard, and then these two outside the artboard, and then I say, okay, just push them to top. Like, push them to top what? Where? Do I push them to top like these? These shouldn't go on top because it's already on top of the arbor. So the ellipse goes on top and these two go on top and they stay a free item, or because they're all grouped together, they can just, we push them outside the artboard on the free items and they don't belong in an artboard. It's kind of tricky. And also here you can see all the items selected, we return all the colors of all the items. If I change one color, it changes only to the item that is affecting that color. So this one should change. Yeah, these, they respect each other, which is good. But if I, for example, if I set these, I grab these two colors are identical, these two items are identical, but now I have a duplicate. So what do we do? We have exactly the same border color and fill color. Do we squish them together and maybe have an indicator here that says these, like number 2, for example, 2 items with a tooltip that says this color is currently used by the 2 selected items or something. So if you change one, it changed to both because these are identical colors. And I can also just, this little thing, it's phenomenal. I love it so much. But yeah, it's, what do we do? What do we do? I don't know. What do we do? These are all questions that need to be answered, and they might be managed through an option for the user. Like in the settings, you can tell the user, you can have these G settings, these unique settings, but that adds complexity. So we should be smart on giving good defaults that the user can learn and are intuitive and they work out of the box. So it's easier to manage these edge cases. Otherwise, the more options we give, the more edge cases we'll have, and the harder we'll get to maintain all those different angles. I know customization is very important, but customization is also very dangerous for both the developer and the user. So we need to be careful in what we want to customize. But I talked enough. Now let's code something. Well, as I said, I want to code the control, the ability to change the snapping threshold. And this might be a quick Vala tutorial to show you how to implement a custom setting schema and hook it up to your application and adapt your UI based on the setting schema of the user. So we can do that. First of all, let's create a new branch, get checkout be, how do we call it? Snapping sensitivity setting, something like that. Yeah, pretty easily understandable. Okay, so we have this, and we have a couple of questions. Actually, one question. Yeah, Danny missed the customization of the pixel grid. Is no problem. And Bello Brown asks, how about putting all the layers in one object and then add the multi-select? Wait, what do you mean? It's not clear. Sorry. Can you elaborate your question? It's, putting all the layers into one object? Do you mean grouping them and then add the multi-select? Grouping and selecting multiple items that are not grouped are two different things and should behave differently. Otherwise, we will have, we cannot force a group to items that are not grouped. That wouldn't work. That would create some strange behavior that the user doesn't expect. Let's start while you write your question if you want. If you want to know more, if you want to elaborate on your question, let's start coding something. So the first thing, of course, it's easier for us to implement something custom because we already have everything in place. But if you want to implement something custom, first of all, this has been updated to 2021. 2022? No, I wish it was 2022. So we will be out of the things is here. So we implemented a class inside our services folder. You can put it whatever you want, that extends the glib settings. The glib settings is pretty great. Basically, it gives you an interface to hook your application and listen and update to the G settings schema of your Linux installation, if it uses the schema G settings, of course. We have the default canvas settings. You can see what we can do in the canvas. We can change the grid color, enable or disable the snaps, and change the snaps color. And here we need to declare the type of variable that we want to use in order to control the sensitivity. So we can change these to probably an integer, and we can basically duplicate exactly like we do for the shapes, right? Main window settings, the export shed, export alpha, export border. We need to border, set border size. Yeah, this is what we have in the default shape settings. We can just copy these and put it in our theme settings, default canvas settings, just the snaps color. Put it here in the, instead of border size, let's do snaps sensitivity. Is it? Ooh. I don't know how to write sensitivity, apparently. Sensitivity. Yeah, sensitivity. And this is snaps. And this is sensitivity. Boom. Bum. Okay, so we updated our glib settings class here by saying, okay, now we have this new variable, this new attribute of the glib settings class that interfaces, and this is actually owned, interfaces with the snap sensitivity, and also gets the snap sensitivity from the schema and can set the snap sensitivity integer value from the schema. We need to add these to our schema, because if we open, for example, dconf that allows us to navigate to our schema, you can see here I'm inside com, GitHub, Akira. We have all those options, right? We have the border color, the border size, everything is set there, but we don't have any sensitivity. If I write sensitivity, nothing happens. Like, we don't have that thing. So we need to physically create it. And this needs to be created when the user installs the application or updates the application. And we can do it by opening our gschema file, which is a simple XML file that we use during our Mason build process to install custom thing. So if we go into the snaps color section, for example, sorry, not section, but key, we can declare a key with an XML just formatting, simple formatting, and we have some default attribute that we can set, summary and a description, which is very, very simple. We can duplicate the border size since we are using an integer, and right below the snaps color, and here we can change the name. First of all, define the name of these new schema settings that we are implementing. So instead of border size, this is the snap sensitivity. The type is integer. You can see here we have type of Boolean, or type string, or type integer. You can use also array of strings, array of integer. You can declare a lot of different things. The default sensitivity that we want, it's 4, because that's what we are using. And we can update here default snaps sensitivity. The default sensitivity threshold of the default sensitivity of the snapping threshold, something like that, right? It's this description, it's good if we're expecting a lot of users to access the dconf, but we don't. This is more for us developers to remember what is this little thing. So now we have this G settings schema. We can check the border size if there's something else that we need to define. It's of course the settings, but we can do it in a second. So now we need to create the option to update this thing in the settings panel. When they open the settings dialog, where do we put that? And we already pretty much have everything in place, so it's going to be pretty simple. So we can open our settings dialog here in the border color, border grid, set border, border width. These are all the options that we have here. Border size, width range. Yeah, we can pretty much copy everything here. We're duplicating these border size things, which is great. Okay, so in this page, we are creating all the sections for the settings. You can see we have some private methods here to generate the general box, interface, canvas box. Of course, these snappings belong to the canvas, so we check what are we doing in the canvas box. In the canvas box, we're returning a GTK widget, which is just a grid. We are creating the grid where we define the pixel grid, define the color, and then here we have the snapping guides. And the snapping guides define the default option for the snapping guides, enable snapping guides color, we manage the color, and below here, we can snap colors. We can paste this. And we can say that the grid attach snapping guides color. We are at position 6 on the grid, so these should be at 7. Let's do snapping sensitivity. Does it make sense? Snapping sensitivity threshold. Hello, Tony Stark. That's good to see you. I'm not making a game. I'm making Akira, the Linux design application tool. It's a design tool, a UX design tool built in GTK and Vala. And that's what I'm coding right now. Stick around and see how it's awesome. Shahik, what's up, Sensei? Hey, hello, Shahik. Gaver, do you pronounce like that? Your social media handle. You can use material icon theme. It contains icons for Vala, Mason, and etc. Yes, yes, I didn't update the material icon theme. I think I'm using the material community edition, I think, but yeah, I don't really care. It's fine. Thanks for the suggestion. I will check them out anyway. Snapping sensitivity threshold. You guys think it's understandable enough? I hope. Snaps color. Snaps color, where is defined the snaps color? Because it's here. Border size. Am I using the border size somewhere else? Yes, I'm using it here, and I'm using it here. Border size. Oh, these can be locally declared. So yeah. So all these border size here, it's below border width here. So these, I don't need to declare a private attribute. I can update everything to snaps sensitivity, snap sensitivity. And we can create a spin button, which is that little GTK widget item with a plus and minus to the side. We can give it a threshold, or we can give it a range. We want, if I'm not wrong, this range as the minimum. Yeah, I'm using Vala language server, which gives me autocomplete the minimum and the maximum amount and the steps. We want just to give it like 1 pixel incremental, but we can also have it to 0. 0, and the maximum is 9,000. I don't know who's the mad lad Who's the medled that will have a threshold of 9,000 pixels? I guess if you're doing something really massive. But yeah, let's leave it at that. Let's see how it behaves. So this is a 7th position. So we're attaching the snap sensitivity button to the grid, to the 7th row at the first column. We start from the left column is 0. Is like an array, like a JavaScript PHP array. Starts with 0. Start with 0 to the 7th row. We start at 1 to the 7th row. So the 2 elements will be one attached to another onto the side. And then we can use the settings that it's globally available throughout the application to bind the setting schema that we just generated. So in our case, the snaps sensitivity here. We can do a super easy bind to the snap sensitivity value. So when these changes, the value will change. And when these, of course, value changes, also the settings will change. And let's see how it works. One thing that we have to do, let's duplicate this because I have a snap switch here, which is a GTK settings switch. I created this helper class to automatically generate a switch that is connected to the G settings schema. In this case, I'm just passing the enable snaps, which is very straightforward. But I have a switch, so I can hook the switch. I can bind the property of the active switch, and binding the property means that whenever the active property of the setting switch changes, we need to apply the same result to the other item's property. So I'm saying basically the snap sensitivity is the other button here. So what I'm doing here is simply when the snap switch changes active status from active or deactivated, activated, like enabled, disabled, the same status, which in this case is a Boolean status, so it's true or false, should be applied to the snap color sensitivity. So when a button or an item in GTK is sensitivity set to 0, or sensitivity set to false, it means you cannot click on it. And this is good because it helps the user understand that if you disable an option that controls, if you disable the snaps, we don't want to leave the color customization and the sensitivity customization like usable or enabled because they don't affect anything. And it's good for the user to know if you disable that, these are also disabled. So don't waste time in changing options for things that are disabled. It's good user experience. So we are doing this binding property, which is great. And we do also a binding flag sync create. So whenever the item is generated, we check immediately what's the option there, like how is the G setting set. We don't wait for the G setting to change in order to update our buttons. We change it immediately on creation. So everything is in sync. So we have this now. And let's see if I did everything right and nothing is broken. Okay, so int doesn't declare a G value take function. So this is not owned. Yeah, my mistake, sorry. This is not an owned value. Owned value are strings for the G settings. This is a particular aspect of G setting. Gabber probably knows why. I'm just following what the G settings want. But here, if we launch the application now and we open our settings, oh, we have an error. Of course we have an error because, and I was expecting this, it's not that I didn't know, I was absolutely expecting. We have an error because, of course, the terminal says, does not contain your Akira G setting schema, does not contain a key name snaps sensitivity. So cannot do all the things that we're asking to do here. Cannot hook up your buttons to the snap sensitivity, cannot hook up your items to the snap sensitivity and all the good stuff. because we didn't have installed. In order to install it after we compile, we need to do sudo ninja install. And this is a sudo command because we need to install it into the user directory, user share local, unless, of course, you use Flatpak or Snap, something like containerize a solution that doesn't install in your system, but we're installing in a system. So we are compiling the G schema, and we updated everything with Mason. So now if we run it again and we open the settings, no crash, because of course now we have in the canvas option, we have the snap sensitivity that starts from 4. Of course, now if we load our trustworthy file, we have the snap sensitivity. If we change something to canvas, I don't know, snap sensitivity 20, and we try it, nothing changes. Because of course we didn't hook that particular value, the snap sensitivity, to the actual generation of the snaps, the actual interaction and threshold of the snaps. But if we open dconf, the dconf editor, and we search for sensitivity, yeah, snap sensitivity, you can see was saved with value 20. And this is the amazing thing about the double binding property of the G settings. You don't need to have save options there. If you disable that, you see all these are disabled. I cannot click on it. If you enable it, these are enabled. If I change these back to 4 and I reopen dconf and I go down to snap sensitivities back to 4, I don't need to save anything. I don't need to have any save these, cancel these, reset these. As soon as I change an option, it's automatically synced, which is great. I love updating things without needing to save and cancel and delete. There are options, there are aspects of course, working where it's necessary to save these. For example, in a design tool, we have the save and save as. It doesn't auto-save because these, for example, you have a very complex UI design interface, but in one particular aspect, the client or yourself, you need to export just one square. So you want to clear out your artboard, you want to move things around, you want to make space in order to export just this, but this is just to export. You don't want to save this. So you can then click and just quit without savings, because I don't need to save my changes and I can restore or reopen the file with the previous changes. So the saving of states, it's important in specific situations. It's not always the best solution. So auto-saving is good, auto-saving is bad. It depends on the context, of course. Oh, Gabber has a couple options. Oh, you didn't know about sync create. Yeah, the binding flags are amazing. They're like bidirectional also. If something updates, if one of the two synced elements update, automatically the other updates. It's not always one-way binding, like from source to target. It's also, you can do it from target to source, which is in some cases very helpful. Are you using Valalint? I'm using Valalint. Yes, I have IO Elementary Valalint installed in the system, but I wasn't able to hook it to Visual Studio Code. I don't know if it's possible, but we have it hooked to the GitHub repository. Whenever we push something to the repo or we create a pull request or something, we run the Valalint in the GitHub CI, which is very good. Yeah, let me know if it's possible to hook Valalint to VS Code. I tried many times. I couldn't make it work. I was able to add Vala language server, but it's a bit wonky sometimes. Yeah, especially when I create a new class and I regenerate the Mason, or like I build the Mason, it doesn't recognize the new class and breaks everything. I need to restart the Vala language server sometimes. It works pretty weird. But okay, so now we have the snap sensitivity, right? So when this changes, we need to always reference this snap sensitivity now instead of the default sensitivity. And there we have that thing in the snap manager, if I'm not wrong. I might be wrong. Line width, dot radius. No, I guess it's in the snapping. Yeah, sensitivity. There you go. Look at here. So instead of having this value, and you can see we're using this value sensitivity. Come on, select it. We're using this value here to, in the method, adjust sensitivity to see if the canvas scale is bigger than sensitivity, return 1. So we avoid using a sensitivity that doesn't work well with the canvas scale. And then we're using it just twice, if I'm not wrong. 3 times, yeah, well, we declare. So instead of doing this, since these snapping, it's a utility. Yeah, it's a class that uses these two, and this is a static method applies snapping. We can do something. Since we defined our settings in the application level, at the application level, you see we created the GTK application class, but then we put something completely outside, the settings, because the settings shouldn't be tied to the window or a specific section. The settings should be tied to the entire application, because if I change the settings to, I have like 3 different Akira applications open, and I change the settings to say, I want in this application, in this window, the snappings to be 20, in this window, the snapping to be 2, and the other window snappings to the 35. Then you close all the windows, which value is correct. We could potentially save that value in your file, so when you open the file, it remembers the custom value. But if you're not saving any file, what do we leave as a default? It gets very hairy and very complicated. So settings, even if sometimes maybe the user wants in one window, wants to see the pixel grid, and another doesn't want to see the pixel grid, it's easier for us as developers having one settings to rule them all, and just the settings are global, deal with that. But because we have these global settings that is declared to an application level, we don't need to reference anything, or we don't need to pinpoint any type of specific class. We can just use it, settings, right here, and Vala language server recognizes these our services settings. So here we can do something. We can check warning and see if this value is actually the one correct, right? We can print the integer of our settings, snaps sensitivity. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Oh my God, semicolon. Okay. Yeah, you can see Vala language server is a little bit slow. Like it gave me an error for a couple of seconds, and then, okay, it's not an error actually. So it's a bit tricky. But now whenever we call the adjust sensitivity method, we should have a warning in our terminal that tells us what is the snapping sensitivity, and we can compile these and check. So let me put it this way so you can see it right at the bottom here, the snapping sensitivity. If I create an item, see 4 pixels of snapping sensitivity. If I change these to 20, snapping sensitivity is 20. Perfect. So it's completely synced and responsive. Of course, one extra thing that we should do is that if you have one item only, this snap sensitivity shouldn't happen because it's useless. So actually we can implement it right now. We can implement it right now because this is silly. Select a bound manager, snap manager. Okay, so interrupt if the user disables the snaps. So here basically for we are moving all the items that we have in place. These are extra space we don't need. We're moving all the items that we have in place, and first we move it by the user, what the user wants to move, and then we calculate the snaps, and Okay. We calculate the snaps, and then we redo the calculation to see if we need to change the sensitivity of the snaps. But we interrupt here. We don't do anything if, of course, the snaps are disabled by the user. We can add an extra option here to say interrupt if the snaps are disabled, or if the selected items, we have an array list here called selected items, which is a glib list. If the selected items is just equal to 1, so we can have these if selected items is equal to 1. Just done. Don't do anything, because we don't need to calculate any snaps, because we don't have any other item to snap to, so it's kind of useless. And now we can, instead of using this sensitivity constant variable, we can replace it with our G settings. Bam. And here we can delete these, because this is not used anymore in the whole application. So we can remove this constant variable. Now, let's see if it works and we didn't break anything. Ninja. Okay, we have one this, nothing happens. We should confirm that the snaps don't happen, but here now we have canvas, it's 4, canvas sensitivity threshold. Oh, sorry. Mistake. It's not if the selected item is 1. If all the items in the whole file, if we only have 1 items in the whole file, which is something that we can check in the items manager. The items manager, can we access the items manager from the selected bound items manager? Yes, we can access window item manager. So the items manager, we keep track of the free items and the artboards. So we can have publicly available method count. Yeah, we already have get items count. So we need to tap this. Sorry, my mistake. Because of course, if we are, that was kind of piratey. If we are selecting only 1 item, it's always 1. But we need to know if we have other items around. So if these, let's change this. If this window items manager get selected item count is equal to 1. Nice. That should work. And also, actually, let's do this. Let's whoa, what happened? Where did I change this? Here. Warning. Snapping. We can see if that method is actually run when we have only 1 item in the canvas. So move it, nothing happens. If I do 2, yeah, there you go. We have the snapping happening. So if I change the value here to something like super aggressive, like 20, what happens? Boom, bam, look at that. Look how aggressive is this snapping. Way more aggressive. If I put something crazy that probably is gonna lock it in place, like 100 pixels, boom, bam, bam, I cannot move it. Look at that. This is beautiful. It works exactly. Or if I say, okay, I want the guides, but I don't want anything else, just set to 0. Yeah, I have the guides that just barely visible because it's set to 0, so it doesn't cause any snap. It doesn't create any friction, any magnetic things, but can, of course, reset it to 4. Bam, 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 bam. Okay, amazing. That's what I wanted. A little bit of comments here. Interrupt if the user disabled the snapping, or we don't have any adjacent item to snap to, something like that, right? It's good. And before committing something, what I like to do, I like to go through all the change sets. So this is correct. Default snap sensitivity, default sensitivity of the snapping threshold. Perfect. Settings dialog. Snap sensitivity. We bound that. Select a bound manager. We fixed this, so we don't run it if we had only one item. We updated the date here because we updated the snap sensitivity, and the snapping, of course, we deleted the sensitivity constant variable, and we're using the settings. Amazing. That's exactly what I wanted. So let's commit this. Git add, commit, implement snapping sensitivity threshold option in settings. Push, set upstream, origin, snapping. Bam! We created a new amazing feature in a few minutes because, of course, Akira is built incredibly well. No, it's not true. Oh, Gabber, you... We have a couple of questions here. Okay, let me switch to my beautiful face and let's handle a bunch of questions. Gavver said, asked about this, how to develop without sudo on this curse. Yeah, I don't know. Are you searching for translators right now? The tech. Yes, absolutely. You can go, let me switch back. All our code is available freely on GitHub. So if you go to the Akira UX branch on GitHub and you check for PO, which is the translation thing, you should find the file of your language and you can start translating all the things that you need to translate. So for example, the German translation should everything, I think. You need to generate it, you need to update it, of course, to pull the latest string changes. But bear in mind that this is still in alpha. So string changes, they happen pretty much every day. So I don't know how worth is to, you can definitely do it. We're super happy if you do, if you want to contribute. But if you do it, probably once a week, the strings are going to be outdated because we're constantly changing. We're going to have a string freeze probably before the release candidate. So we're going to release beta hopefully in a few months before summer, and then we're gonna have a full probably year of beta cycle where we release new things and strings can change, and then we're gonna have a release candidate where we're gonna release it everywhere, string freezes, and just we're gonna fix bugs and not implement any new feature. Gavver says Vala language server is slow because it compiles all projects every time. Really? Oh my god. Vala doesn't support incremental compilation yet. Therefore, the larger the project, the longer it will take to update the Vala language server. That makes sense. It's, oof, that's rough, recompiling the project every time. Especially Akira is growing, is becoming like a massive project. Prince has implemented a special mechanism that remembers auto-completion. So auto-completion are fast in any project. That's good. And Gavver keeps saying, this option for snapping looks amazing. Always wanted to settings for it. Yes, me too. That's why I implemented it. I'm so happy. So of course, I'm going to create the pull request and ask for reviews and blah, blah, blah. Gavver, by the way, we're looking for developers, helpers, maintainers, someone that can test this thing. So you seem very experienced with Vala. It would be great if you could, I don't know, just participate in Akira. I'm just recruiting. I'm using this live streaming to recruit people, which is what I do and which is what I like. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any other questions. I will wait a couple of minutes and then I think we can conclude this. Oh, my brother called me. My brother is in Italy, so I'm gonna call him back after I finish this live streaming. But yeah, this is awesome. I shared the live streaming picture here. Yeah, this is my setup right now. It's not focusing. Okay, it's just focusing. And it's beautiful. It's a great setup. I have this massive screen in front of me with camera, and then the laptop. It's connected via HDMI input to OBS, and OBS manages everything. Do you remember the time where doing a live stream was impossible, even on Windows and macOS? And now it's just, you can do it through your browser. Technology is amazing. Alrighty, I think we can conclude this live streaming session. It's been great. Very, very satisfied about the outcome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much all for participating. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the suggestions. Let me know in the comments below of this video what you would like to see in Akira in the next releases. What features maybe you would really like for Akira to adopt before the next beta release. If you go in the GitHub repository, there's a pinned issue that it's called beta release wishlist, and there the full list of all the features that we will implement before the beta release. You can comment on that issue to ask or request extra things. And if you want, of course, collaborate, participate, just, it's totally open source, build it locally, compile it, test it, and yeah, it's do whatever you want. Oh, now that I'm closing, I have a bunch of questions. Okay. Gavin said it's quite possible I don't have much time right now because I changed jobs from C# GTK to front-end Angular React. Oh my God, yeah. I did the opposite, actually. I started as JavaScript, Angular, Vue.js, React developer to I learned by myself C and GTK. So you spend your free time learning. Yeah, makes sense. Mohammed says, first time heard this Vala. I'm a C developer. Is it okay or almost for me to learn Vala? It's totally fine. Like Vala, in my opinion, it's way easier than C, C#, or C++. It's very, very easy to learn. It's more similar to PHP than to C. And it's good. It compiles natively in C, which is fantastic, and it's faster. So you should, Mohammed, you should follow Gavin on Twitter because he's a Vala developer. I think he manages also the Vala official Twitter handle. And just, yeah, on my YouTube channel, there are Vala tutorials. You can start following those and see how it feels working with Vala. But anyway, if you want to support the project, you can join also the Akira UX, not Mastodon. Well, you can follow us on Twitter, on Mastodon, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel to check updates. Probably once every 2 or 3 weekends, I do this live streaming to show the progress and to code something live. You can also join the Matrix chat, which is totally open. We have a Patreon. You can support it. If you support Patreon, you get access to a private Discord channel just for supporters. And you can also support us on LibrePay or GitHub sponsor. This is a completely free open source project, and even once this project is released and we're going to start hopefully making money through sponsors, through partnership, it's going to remain 100% free and open source. We will never make it paid to be used. This is going to be an open source, professional level Linux application for UX and UI designers. That's our purpose. Okay, Ali, when will you complete the Vala tutorial? I don't know. I have so much work to do and I'm scrambling, but this afternoon I should be able to publish one video if I manage to edit it. I have some tutorials recorded. I have to find the time to edit it. But anyway, thank you guys so much for participating, and I talk to you in the next live streaming. Until then, happy coding. Bye-bye.